Welcome to All Things Moore County, Moore County's weekly radio show highlighting the many facets of the Sandhills. That includes real estate, lifestyle, community and neighborhoods, and now from 4 Properties, here's your host, Bill Sahadi.
Hey everybody, it's actually not Bill Sahadi today, it is Calli McIntyre, and I am here for a segment on food allergies. It is Food Allergy Awareness Month, and we are currently in Food Allergy Awareness Week. Food Allergy Awareness Week lasts from the 13th of May to the 19th of May, and I have 3 very special guests with me today, so I'm going to introduce them. First, we have Xander Flo. He is actually homeschooled due to his severe 8 food allergies. He is 10 years old and he enjoys swimming, karate, and playing with his corgi. To the left of him is Tiffany Kramer. She has been an educator for 12 years at Bass Lakeview Elementary. She has taught 1st and 2nd grades, and she graduated from UNCW with a BA in elementary education, and she actually went to Bass Lakeview in Union Pines. And then to her left, we have Herschel Smith. He is the pharmacist and co-owner with the Village Apothecary, and he studied at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. He is from Vass, and he actually went to Union Pines. So hello, everybody. How are you?
Good.
Good. Awesome. So first, we're going to talk about your experience with food allergies, Xander. So my first question for you is, so you have 8 food allergies.
Yes.
So what are they?
Dairy, which is the most severe one, and then eggs, peanuts, grapes, and beef, pork, and lamb, and shellfish.
Wow. So how old were you when you were diagnosed?
I was 18 months.
18 months. So going out to eat, is that hard for you? Because I see that you've had many different encounters with carelessness regarding getting the wrong foods at restaurants, having cross-contamination. How have you handled going to restaurants?
Well, first we have to meet the manager, the person that owns the place, and then we have to tell them that I have 8 food allergies, and then they're like, okay, we'll try and make sure that there's nothing on it except the food that you want. And then, like at a restaurant, we go there and we tell the waitress that we know the owner, and they'll say, oh yeah, you're Xander, aren't you? I'm like, yeah.
Okay, so I guess this kind of leads into the fact that you are homeschooled, so you can't even go to school because your allergies are so hard to deal with. How have you been bullied because of that, and did you ever go to school, or?
I did go to preschool, and there was one kid, there's always that one kid, that decides to bully you, and he would like take a marker and like write on my arm, and he would say like, why can't you eat this food? And he would take like some cheese and be like, why can't you eat this? And then one time he like snatched my arm and took his very sharp fingernails and just scraped it down my arm, and I thought it was bleeding at first. But then I darted to the bathroom and I washed it off, and I was like, okay, so it's all right.
Yeah. So let's talk to you, Tiffany. So obviously there's some bullying that goes on with kids with food allergies. Do you see that in your classroom?
We're actually kind of blessed with the kids. If you approach it and allow the children to know that kids have allergies, and now with more kids being more prevalent of having allergies, whether it's to food or to other insect bites or that kind of thing, that they're more accepting and they're more aware, and so I haven't seen any bullying, only support in the classroom.
How are the teachers informed about food allergies?
When children are enrolled, their parents have to fill out an information card, and then that information goes into our full system, and then we are informed on that. I also have an information card in my classroom and I have an allergy, and so I want parents to make sure that just in case something gets slipped, I want to make sure that I know and I have information straight in the classroom.
So if there's an emergency, where is it located for the kids?
If they have an EpiPen or inhaler of any kind, it's kept in the classroom in a locked container. But if it's anything that can be, administered at the nurse's station, then it's kept there.
Gotcha. So let's talk about lunchtime. That's obviously a hard time for kids who are enrolled at schools with food allergies. So at lunchtime, how do you take care of that for the kids with food allergies?
With kids that are going through the lunch line, with our systems being connected into with their lunch number, when a child goes through and they give them their lunch number, they're automatic. There's a balloon that pops up on the computer screen that says this child is allergic to milk or dairy, and just to make sure that as they're going through, the lunch ladies are checking their plate before they remove or leave the cafeteria. But as of now, we no longer serve peanuts or peanut butter sandwiches or anything like that in the school, in the cafeteria, just because of the rising number of peanut allergies.
Wow, that's awesome. And I know just from experience, whenever I was in school, I should probably state the fact that I have food allergies myself. I'm allergic to peanuts, and now recently coconut, we just found out. But growing up, it was always hard for me in the lunchroom, and parents would always complain about me not being able to eat peanuts. They would think that it was just because I didn't like it, or that I wanted to cause this ruckus in the classroom. But do you have parents complain, or?
No, most of the parents are very supportive, especially if I have a student, like for this year with a peanut allergy. I make sure that goes home like in kind of the first letter out, and just saying, just to let you know, we have a friend that has a peanut allergy. If you just make sure the snacks that you bring in, we can be a little understanding about that and try to keep the peanut butter at home.
That's good. The times are definitely changing then. So let's go to Herschel. So I have a question for you, since we're on the subject of EpiPens. What are the differences between the different epinephrine options?
Primary with epinephrine options, there are several different brands of epinephrine. However, for the pediatric dose, it's usually the 0.15 milligram, and for adult dose, it's the 0.3 milligram. There's the AviQ, the standard EpiPen, and there's a generic, but you have the AviQ, don't you, Xander?
Yeah.
And with those, it is injectable. It's not something you can take orally. There's certainly the other types of epinephrine you hear on TV if a person goes into cardiac arrest, etc. But you're really primarily using it in this case for if a person would have an anaphylactic reaction. All the histamine that's being released, it tends to cause low blood pressure. It makes the vessels widen, so they tend to get where they'll faint. They may have trouble breathing as their bronchioles constrict, so it helps dilate the bronchioles, constrict the blood vessels, and relieve a lot of those symptoms. Really, the injectable is the only method. The trick is having one with you and easily accessible at all times.
Wow, that was really cool. I didn't know that. So let's go back to you, Xander, on the subject of EpiPens. So you have a really, really good EpiPen story that I was able to hear whenever I first met you. So tell us about your EpiPen story.
So I was very little, and we were at a restaurant, and the waiter walks up to the table, puts muffins on the table, no question, no nothing, and he just puts them down on the table, and me, like, right in front of me, and me being little, I'm like, muffin, I want. So I grab the muffin, and I eat it, and then I start not feeling good, and then my mom knows that something is wrong, because I can't say mommy, and then, so I can't get anything down, I can't get any liquids down. So then she puts me on the changing table, and she gives me epinephrine, and I jump, so I get a little, it rips my skin, and then I had to get stitches, and then now I say that scar is where my mom saved my life.
That is so sweet. I've actually never had to have an EpiPen injection from a reaction, but I'm sure people are wondering, like, how bad does it hurt?
It's like millisecond. Like, there's a little jump, but then it's like sometimes you don't even care that it hurts because your throat is about to close. And then when you get epinephrine, it kind of hurts, but then sometimes you don't really care.
So how many times have you had to use it?
I've had to use it, 3 times. 3 times.
Did you go to the hospital right after that?
Yes.
Because EpiPens, and correct me if I'm wrong, Herschel, you're supposed to go to the hospital right after.
Absolutely. It's a short-term relief, and very much if an anaphylactic reaction is occurring, it's a life-saving effort. However, you do need still immediate medical attention.
Because the epinephrine's too strong, right?
Well, it's not so much too strong. You want it to. It'll stimulate the heart. They'll feel that increased heart rate and perhaps palpitations. But the effect of it is short-lived. So they could go right back into a similar state if they don't receive medical attention.
Gotcha. Tiffany, have you seen any bad reactions in the classroom or in your school, or has there been any instances where food allergies have been really bad?
No, we've really watched, especially with the kids. I've never had a food allergy. I've had an insect bite where he's gotten stung by a bee on the playground, and we've had to go to the nurse's station to kind of watch him, and then he started to go into a more effect, and so we had to administer the EpiPen. But never a food allergy. I think we've gotten so cautious in the classroom now about food, and we understand, and definitely making sure the kids understand there's no sharing, even though it's really nice to share, and you want to share with your friends. Definitely no sharing food.
Well, let's talk about some fun stuff. Xander, you're obviously a regular 10-year-old boy. So what do you do on your time when you're just having fun?
Most of the time we take care of dogs. We are pet sitters, and we're Four Paws, because my mom's maiden name is Four.
That's so cool.
And that's what we do. And then sometimes I go outside and I ride little things, and sometimes I play with my corgi, little 5-month-old corgi.
Gotcha. And we actually live in the same neighborhood.
Yes, we do.
That is funny that I just found that out. We live on a lake. So do you play in the lake any?
Sometimes I will go fishing sometimes.
Gotcha. So I think what people need to realize is that kids with food allergies are just regular people, and if we had the option of, eating Reese cups, we would, right? So what do you want people to know about your allergy?
It's very severe. People can die, and it's not like, okay, you're gonna get an upset tummy, you're gonna get upset stomach. And then sometimes my mom will tell people that I am very, very allergic to dairy and all my other food allergies, and they'll say, oh, well, he's just lactose intolerant. And then she'll say, no, he'll actually die from dairy and all my other food allergies. My throat will close.
So what keeps you inspired? What keeps you going?
Well, one of them is your book.
That was so sweet. I didn't even have to mention it. He just jumped right on that. Let's talk about that.
Okay. It was the anteater that couldn't eat ants. I thought that was really cool because I only had my dairy allergy, and I was getting kind of sad that I couldn't eat cakes that my friends had at their birthday parties, and I was like, that kind of inspired me, be like, okay, I can eat something else. I don't have to eat cake.
Yeah. So I published a book about 3 years ago, It's called The Anteater That Couldn't Eat Ants, and I wrote it for kids with food allergies to bring into classrooms, which I'm going to give you a copy. Tiffany's to take on your classroom. But I basically wrote it so kids could feel that they weren't alone in the situation, and that, when it's put to a cute picture of an anteater and some rhyming words, kids can understand that better. And if we get that instilled into kids at a young age, then it'll be better in the future, and everybody will understand it better. So that's basically what I've been trying to do with this book, but that's really cool that you were impacted by that.
Yeah.
So let's go back to Herschel. And, okay, so I have a question about, things involving prevention. So how can we prevent things going hand in hand with you, Tiffany, in the classroom?
I think preventing in the classroom it's always great to have prophylactic measures, but other than having specific guidelines and making people more aware, just like whenever Xander was speaking of the waiter, I guess that put the muffins in front, you would be surprised how many people, particularly people that are newly diagnosed with a food allergy, that were completely ignorant as to what's out there and what other people experience and how severe the symptoms can be. Everything from your general rash to something much more life-threatening, like breathing difficulties, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But I think awareness is probably the best thing that can be done.
So basically what we're doing now.
Yep, education on the topic.
Yeah, so getting it out to people, you being our little spokesperson, Xander. So I forgot to ask you this earlier. What do you eat? Like, what does your diet consist of? Lots of chicken, right?
Yes, lots of chicken and Doritos. Yeah, I eat
What's
those.
your favorite food?
Probably chicken.
Chicken?
The most that I can get the most energy from. Probably chicken.
So there are alternatives because I use, almond butter and sun butter and different things like that. Do you use sun butter? Like, have you ever heard of that?
One time in preschool, in our class, my mom had to make foods that would go with the alphabet. So we had to do butterfly for B, and she was like, okay, so how do I make a butterfly? So she looked something up, and it was like you take celery and then you put like peanut butter, and one of the kids was allergic to peanut butter, so she took almond butter and put it in the celery stick, and then she made a butterfly, and it was really cool.
It's really, really cool. I know my mom was always like that, coming up with the different alternatives, like Nutella. I'm a big fan of Nutella. So that's definitely been in my life. Let's go back to Tiffany. So how do you include students with birthday celebrations?
We actually have a student that is allergic to eggs in first grade, and her mom is really awesome. So whenever we let her know ahead of time, it's like, hey, we have a birthday coming up this week, and I know they're probably going to bring in cupcakes, and especially for parents that can only purchase certain things, and they still want to bring in a snack. She actually makes little cupcakes so that way without this eggless for her daughter, and so we just try to make sure that we give her heads up in time to be able to send one in, so that way her daughter's not left out.
Well, that's really, really cool. All right, so we're done with the first segment now. We're going to go into the second one in a short bit. All right, welcome back. So we are going to go into segment 2. It is Food Allergy Awareness Week in the month of May, and I am here with my 3 guests. My first guest is Xander Flo. To the left of him is Tiffany Kramer, a teacher at Vast Lake View Elementary. And then to her left is Herschel Smith, and he is a pharmacist and the co-owner of the Village Apothecary. So let's dive right into the second segment. So with this one, I'm leaning more towards the statistics and the kind of logical facts behind food allergies. So I'm going to go to you, Herschel, and a question is, what were the origins of food allergies? How did they come about?
Well, typically, as with most allergies, well, first I want to say probably I think the statistics is 1 in every 25 children has some type of food allergy and 1 in every 20 adults. So that's a fairly statistical high relevance. But with the origins of it, as our bodies are exposed to various proteins, various substances, molecules, really allergies are an overreaction of our immune system to that substance. And if the reaction is very severe, then it can stimulate much more than desired. But with everything with food modifications to, in this day and time, many people are exposed to many different types of food because it's so easier to get food. You may eat something that's not native to this area that you wouldn't have been exposed to 50 years ago, 100 years ago. So I think that has a lot to do with it as well. And the more that we travel and go to different places, which is also something that is much more easily accessible in these days, people become more aware of various responses.
So, Xander, yours kind of popped up too, right? Like you weren't born with certain allergies, they just kind of developed.
I was born with dairy and soy. I grew out of soy, but then I blacked out in the pool because I was eating peanut butter crackers, I was drinking grape juice, and I was eating boiled eggs. So, and
that's a recipe for disaster.
Yes, that is a recipe for disaster. I blacked out in the pool, and then it took a while for me to come back. But then I was just floating in the water, and then I started swimming again. And then I swam back to the end, and my mom was like right there. She was like, "What happened?" I said, "Well, I think I might have blacked out a little bit." And she said, "Well, it was a little more than a little bit, but
Right, so you can grow out of it. So I was born with a dairy allergy, just like you, and a lot of people get that confused with lactose intolerant. It's not the same thing, and that's a huge pet peeve of mine. So I had a milk allergy. I grew out of that, as well as eggs. I grew out of that too. I have always had off-the-chart ratings for a peanut allergy, but I most recently, in the last few months, have developed a coconut allergy, which is so strange how that just pops up. And it's, we're talking a lot about the importance of food allergy awareness in kids, but it can happen as adults. Like, I'm 17, actually, today. It's my birthday. So it just kind of happened at this late, well, I guess not late in life because I'm still young, but at this age. So how does that happen?
Well, primarily from what we understand is usually it's what's called the immunoglobulin E.
Wow.
And that type of antibody, which is responsible typically to bind, for example, with peanuts to the certain peanut protein. When it binds to it, it can elicit all the responses that we don't want, but that can change how the body recognizes, or our immune system recognizes, self from non-self. So with autoimmune diseases, that's usually a defect in that recognizing self and non-self, and it attacks itself. But with food allergies, for whatever reason, whatever change, the body starts to determine that X item, whatever the food item is detrimental to our health or is a threat. And so it attacks it and can go overboard.
So does it have anything to do with, like, a lot of people think that genetically modified foods have an impact?
That is a big question of debate now. And I've heard two good points from it. I do think, I don't know how, just whenever you think of how our bodies have just progressed over time, evolution per se, our bodies are accustomed through thousands of years of eating certain substances. So if you go from eating, say you're eating certain meats, and perhaps the cattle, for example, with beef allergy, say it's grown with a hormone and antibiotics and things of that nature, I mean, it would be easy to recognize that the protein within that animal could be different. And so our body may have not been exposed to such protein before and deems it as harmful.
So, Tiffany, a lot of the allergies that you've seen, are they airborne, or are they just, you just can't eat it?
in the school for this year and the last couple of years, it's only been ingesting the food. The one great thing is I've had parents that when the kids come in, they know what is to expect, and I think that's the big thing, is allowing your kids to understand, what's the side effects if you're starting to go, because like Xander, I'm sure you know that feeling that something's wrong, that you need help immediately. And some kids, especially at the age that I have, understanding my hand swelling, what does that mean? And letting us know. And then that's the reason why as teachers we are instructed on being able to pinpoint and being able to spot those kind of side effects, so we can assess that and take action, and either getting an EpiPen, which we do store one like an extra in the school.
So going back to that feeling that you're talking about, Xander, are yours airborne?
Yes.
Okay. So mine actually used to not be airborne, like peanuts were just from ingesting it, but now it's morphed into a bigger deal. Just like the other day, I was in class and a person had a Reese cup way across the room, and I was able to smell it. It's like almost having like dog-like senses, isn't it? It's weird.
Yeah.
So why is it, Herschel, that some allergies are more severe than others?
I think it primarily depends on how strong of a response your immune system determines or accesses the effect. If it's something, when you were talking about the kind of sense response, many times that's often a learned response. So if you've had an allergic response to an item, or just like if something burnt your hand, then anytime you're near, say it was a stove, you're going to recognize that more immediately each time that you're near it because of that response. And so if it's, for example, I can think of one person that had a chocolate allergy, and if anyone, how it's very common for a person to eat chocolate around others, but she could be in a room and the person would be all the way across the room, and if she could smell the chocolate, you would see her face start getting red, and she would literally start to swell, and you could see hives. But that didn't occur. That wasn't the first symptom to it. Many times, each subsequent exposure that a person has to any allergen, it tends to be a more severe response. And the primary reason behind that is our immune system. The memory cells that comprise our immune system, they develop more and more, and they have a stronger response, and they have a longer memory and produce more antibodies to each exposure, and so you'll get a more drastic response.
So are you more likely to have a food allergy if a member of your family also has one?
Yeah, there is a hereditary component to it. It doesn't mean that it's certainly not an absolute, but it does statistically raise your chances of having an allergy if you do have a family member that possesses it.
So the person, let's talk about Tiffany with students in your school. It's important to know as a student what you can and can't eat, but it's also important as a parent to inform the school. So can you talk about developing allergies, like after summer is coming in, and needing to inform faculty about that?
Yes. Each year when the parents come in, we ask them to fill out more paperwork, and it's really important to make sure that any allergies that might have come up over the summer, that we are notified, so that way we can put it into the system, allow our nurse and our other staff to have that information. So in case the teacher is not there, the rest of the school knows that child has an allergy to certain foods and how to handle it if an emergency does come up.
So let's talk about cures. Herschel, are there any cures? Let's talk about desensitization. It's such a hard word to say. There are really expensive ways, I know. There's like a peanut pill that I've seen going around. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, there isn't a cure. However, just like you're talking about with desensitization, immunomodulation is really the kind of the current trend, and that's where most of the future research is headed. But it's basically allowing a person to be exposed to small amounts of whatever allergen that they have an issue with, and hoping that the body essentially develops tolerance to it. And typically, if you were to go to a immunologist now, like a lot of the allergy clinics, they will use they call it the allergy shot, and you'll stay there because you're injecting what the person is allergic to after they had their allergy test, and you're just injecting minute amounts of it, but the person can still have a very serious reaction to it, which is why they like to do all that in-house and not let you leave, etc. But that's the current treatment.
Gotcha. Well, I can say that I desensitized myself because as a hard-headed child, I would drink milk and eat chocolate and stuff and totally go through pain, but do it anyways, and then I eventually grew out of it, which is awful. Don't suggest that. But a lot of people can't do that because when their allergies are so severe, like Xander's, he couldn't do that with, lamb or beef or pork or anything like that. So it just depends on the person. But we're going to talk about this more when we get back with information on Food Allergy Awareness Week and how to bring awareness to it. Hello everybody and welcome back to All Things Moore County. I am here on this segment of Food Allergy Research and Education with Food Allergy Awareness Week and month, the month of May. I am here with, like I said earlier, Xander Flo to my left. He's a 10-year-old homeschooled student due to food allergies. To his left, Xander's laughing at me. To his left is Tiffany Kramer. She is an educator at Vast Lakeview Elementary. And to her left is Herschel Smith, pharmacist with the Village Apothecary. So let's jump into our first question. And my first question is to Herschel, and it's about drug costs with epinephrine and food allergies.
Yeah, that is a really difficult one. There's a lot of controversy with the epinephrine, with the EpiPen, and then there's a generic form of epinephrine, but they're not considered to be what they term bioequivalent. So many times with insurance companies, that's a big ordeal of to which one they're going to cover. Nonetheless, they're both very expensive. And when I say very expensive, for most individuals that don't have insurance, you're looking at anywhere $400 or $500, sometimes even more, and that's even with the generic brand. The brand name is certainly a margin higher, but not incredibly higher. When then keeping that with you, say for example a child, they would want to have one accessible at school, one at home. If they have if they go to a grandparent's house, etc., they would want those items available at all places. So you could see that becoming a financial burden to parents and to individually even adults that need such. Additionally, the expiration date on those. So even if you don't use them, you still want them available, and if they've expired, they could be no good. So that's another concern. When do you switch them out? When do you not? And with, as expensive as they are, you can see that's not something that people want to just jump the gun on.
Gotcha. So let's talk about teachers and training going into schools. So how are you able to train if a student were to go into anaphylaxis?
At the beginning of our staff meetings each year, the nurse comes in and does a overview of how to use an EpiPen. She has a practice one where we go around and kind of get the use of taking the cap off, and just where it's not an unusual thing in our hands, so we can easily use. And then if we have a student that has a severe allergy, we're also called back in and we have to sign off on the paperwork, and where she does a one-on-one just to make sure that we are completely comfortable with using it.
Well, it's good knowing that kids are safe in schools, but outside of schools it's more difficult. So let's talk about restaurants with food allergies. We talked about that a little bit in the first segment with you, Xander, and how difficult it is. It's really difficult, right?
Yes.
So there have been House bills to develop in different states one in Virginia and Rhode Island, and basically the bill states that all restaurants need to be required to have food allergy training so that if kids like Xander and I go to restaurants, they feel safe and they also know what to do, just like Tiffany in schools, if somebody were to have an anaphylactic reaction. So I am proposing a House bill here in North Carolina. I've been at it for about 1.5 years now, and basically it's just a copy of those bills in the other states, and I'm trying to get it passed for kids like Xander. And for myself, do you think that's something that would help, Xander?
Yes, I think it's very cool to make the waiters and stuff and other people get educated about how to use epinephrine.
And also it's really inexpensive. It's only $15 per employee to have training in food allergies, and that's such a little amount to how big of an impact it would be if a person were to come in and have a reaction, because it's not only saving the customer, but it's saving their business. So let's talk about ways we can bring awareness to food allergies. I'm going to ask you first, Xander, how can we bring awareness to food allergies?
I like to tell my story. I like to say...
So using your voice.
Yeah. I like to use my voice to spread the word about food allergy awareness.
And the severity of it, too.
Yes, and the severity.
There's a
of it,
big
too.
misconception, like how you said earlier, people think it's just a tummy ache, right?
Yes, people think it's like lactose intolerant, but no, my throat will close and...
Or that you just don't want the
Yes.
food, or that you're just a picky
Yeah,
eater.
yeah. Some people are like, oh, he's just a picky eater. He's not allergic to it.
Right.
But, yeah.
Let's go to you, Tiffany.
As a teacher, though, Calli, I wanted to ask you, how do you use your book? So that way I can use it in the classroom to help bring awareness.
So I talked about my book earlier. It's called The Ant Eater That Couldn't Eat Ants. I wrote it in 8th grade, and currently it is in every elementary school and middle school in Moore County, and it is in at least one public library in every county in North Carolina. So that's 100 counties. It is in 15 states and 17 countries, so that's a progression with this. So basically what I'm doing is I'm trying to get the word out to kids to understand it, so that they can grow into being well-aware adults that can pass the message along to kids. But basically what we're doing right now is perfect by bringing awareness to the subject, because the way we can solve making everybody safer with food allergies is just discussing it like we are now. So let's go to you. What do you think about this, Herschel? How can we bring awareness to it from a
Sure.
pharmacist point of view?
Sure. I think one thing I want to say first, before I get into that subject, is it's really important when you're talking about the training with things like the IVQ or EpiPen, is to, if you're someone or even a caretaker, family member, friend of someone that has or has the need for something like epinephrine, is to understand how to use it before the time would arise that you would need it, because that's the last time you want to stop and read the instructions on how to administer that item. Occasionally we hear stories of that every once in a while, and you can imagine it's really hard to read at that time. But in terms of spreading, a lot of times spread knowledge about that whenever, as a pharmacist, whenever we cancel patients, or someone can come in and they can have something from a simple allergy or simple food allergy, where even things like eczema, and you can spread knowledge about what's going on, could it get worse, and then talking about it. And many times that can stimulate conversation to many other areas, and other people can hear what's going on as well. And the more that people understand and are aware, the more not only tolerant that they'll be to it to other people, because they'll have an understanding.
What about you, Tiffany? How can we bring awareness through the classroom to the outside world?
As a parent with a child with a peanut allergy, my biggest thing is making parents understand the side effects, the symptoms, because they can crop up and things can happen. My son's hands would swell, his face would go red, he would get really itchy all over his hands, and just that little bit of swelling, I automatically knew what was getting ready to happen, so I could take a step and to go ahead and taking care of and having his medication there ready for him, and letting the kids know. I mean, even as a 4-year-old now, I say, what happens if you have peanuts? He lists off his symptoms, because I want him to be aware of that he has an allergy. Even if I'm not there, he can say, does that have peanuts in it? If that has peanut, I can't have that because my fingers swell and I start, and I get a rash, and I get hives and I get itchy, and so just feeling like we got to make our children proactive for themselves, but also educating educators and caregivers and anyone that's around children, letting them know the side effects, because it can crop up without us knowing, and we have to be prepared for it.
And children with food allergies tend to be very independent if they are born with food allergies. I know I am still very independent from having food allergies. At a very young age, I had to learn, like you were saying, what my allergens were, what I had to do to deal with them. And Xander's very, very independent. You can tell he has his EpiPen with him at all times. But, children can also be advocates. So, like your son, Xander can be an advocate, which he already is. So, way to go, buddy. Giving him a high five right now. But we can also do things like how I handled it in elementary school. I started this thing called Protect a Life. It was called the Be a Pal program. And basically what I did is I got in front of my classroom and told them, this is what I have. I don't want to have it, but here's how we can try to include me in things. But by doing that, it spread awareness, by my book. I'm not saying you have to go out and write a children's book to do it, but you can help spread the word, like how Xander said it impacted him, and how we're doing this discussion right now and putting it on the radio and putting it on podcasts. That certainly helps. But I just want to thank you guys for coming out today and having this awesome talk and discussion with me. Hopefully it will get out to people, and it'll spread all across the country and hopefully the world, and people will be more accepting of kids like me and Xander. Yeah.
Can I say hi, Calli?
Hello, Bill.
You've done what a great show.
Thank you.
I'm so impressed sitting here listening to it. Xander, you are off the charts.
He's a rock star.
And the whole cast, all your guests you put together, Xander, it shows you when you want to do something, you put your mind to it.
Yeah.
And she's a good role model for you. Yeah. And you're going to be a good role model for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And you just speak beautifully.
Thank you.
And there's a freedom in talking about this. Kind of. You feel?
Yeah.
It feels good, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. And Calli, we are grateful that you could come and do the show. And I just wanted to interrupt because I didn't have to be in the show. I didn't have to talk. I didn't even ask her for an outline. There are so few people her age who can just have a presence and go and do what you do. You just own it. And it means a lot to you personally, and you want to spread the word. Mm-hmm. I thank you all. You should, anytime you want to come back.
Sounds good.
Food allergy. I do have one question to ask. Is there a place that people can go to read about food allergies? Either a website, because I find that so many people don't really know the extent of how severe they are.
Yes, so if you want more information on, what Herschel is talking about today with the more scientific side of it, or if you want to do the whole Be a Pal, Protect a Life thing, like how I did in the classroom, ways you can do that is you can go to foodallergy.org, and there are tons of useful tools on there that talk all about food allergies, the origins of it, and how we can prevent it in the future. So thanks, guys. See you next week on All Things Moore County.